Good evening, everybody. It's May 20th, 2024, and this is a regular meeting of Moscow's City Council. Drew.
If you could please stand if you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, because we're in May, I have a couple of proclamations tonight. And the first one is the Emergency Medical Services EMS Week proclamation. Whereas emergency medical services are a vital component of public service, and whereas the members of Moscow Volunteer Fire Department and city career staff are ready to provide life-saving care to those in need 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and whereas access to high-quality emergency care dramatically improves the survival and recovery rate of those who experience sudden illness and injury, and whereas the members of Moscow Volunteer Fire Department consist of mostly volunteer emergency medical technicians, paramedics, and firefighters, and trained members of the public, and whereas the members of these teams, whether volunteer or career, engage in countless hours of specialized training and continuing education to enhance their life-saving skills. And whereas it is appropriate to recognize the value and accomplishments of the emergency medical services of the Moscow Volunteer Fire Department by designating Emergency Medical Services Week, and whereas this year is the 50th anniversary of EMS Week after President Gerald Ford's 1974 authorization of EMS Week to celebrate EMS practitioners and the important work that they do in our nation's communities. Now, therefore, I, Art Betke, the mayor of the city of Moscow, Idaho, do hereby recognize the week of May 19th through the 25th, 2024, is Emergency Medical Services Week with the theme Honoring Our Past, Forging Our Future. I encourage the community to observe this week and thank their volunteer and career members of the Moscow Volunteer Fire Department. So I don't have the official proclamation to hand up, but we will get it to our representatives, who I also invite to come up to the podium and say a few words on behalf of the EMS volunteers in the city.
Is it being forged?
Yes.
Lori's
we're
upstairs
forging
doing
our
it. She's
future.
doing it right now.
Well, that could lead to burns. Chief Brian Nickerson, hello.
Good evening. How are you all?
Great.
Thank you. Thank you again for recognizing the EMS week this year again. The EMS folks, all the volunteers put in so many hours and dedicate a lot of time and effort. We are still averaging 20% above even last year so far this year. So the work is endless. Training is endless, and the efforts that these folks put in and the career staff puts in, can't thank them enough. So greatly appreciate it. Proclamation each year is helpful, and it puts it out in the public. So thank you again. Appreciate it. Mayor, council,
Welcome.
appreciate it.
Thank you, Chief. And it's my pleasure and that of the entire council for all the work that you guys do. Much appreciated. The other proclamation is for Memorial Day. So the Memorial Day proclamation. Whereas Memorial Day, originally called Decoration Day, is a day of remembrance for those who died in our nation's service. And whereas Memorial Day was initially proclaimed on May 5th, 1868 by General John Logan, National Commander of the Grand Army of the Republic, in his General Order Number 11. And whereas Memorial Day was first observed on May 30th, 1868, when flowers were placed on the graves of Union and Confederate soldiers at Arlington National Cemetery. And whereas our predecessors fought in wars so that future generations could have freedom, and whereas they helped shape the society that we know today, including our political, economic, military, and social systems, advances in science and technology, and cultural traditions that enrich our heritage. And whereas it is important on Memorial Day to reflect on the whole life memories of our military personnel who fought and died for our country, to preserve the rights guaranteed under the U.S. Constitution, and to keep our nation strong. And whereas Memorial Day gives us the opportunity to renew our patriotism and to articulate our common desires to live in freedom and seek peace so that our nation's veterans will not have died in vain. Now therefore, I, Art Betke, the mayor of the city of Moscow, Idaho, do hereby recognize May 27th, 2024 as Memorial Day in the city, and I urge all citizens to honor those who have died in service to our country. So keep that one in mind, that it's not just flag waving and vacation. Which seems to be what
Glasses, Mayor?
just when you start counting on your digital device, it betrays you every time. Okay, next up is the consent agenda, which consists primarily of issues of routine nature and have been vetted through the Public Works and Finance or administrative committees prior to this. Any item on the agenda can be removed by any member of City Council for further discussion.
Mr. Mayor,
Madam.
I'd like to remove item F, Moscow Home Depot Development Agreement. And I can't remember the logistics of able to say, with that removal, I would move approval of all other consent agenda items as presented. Can I do it in 2 and 1? Pull it and then,
Oh, we got one more.
Mr. Mayor, I need to pull item D from the
Okay.
consent agenda.
Okay, so items D and F. First off, let's take care of the rest of the items on the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I move that with the exception of D and F, we approve the consent agenda.
Second, and seconded by Bryce. Okay, Haley,
aye.
Julia,
Aye.
Sandra,
Aye.
Bryce.
Aye.
Drew.
Aye.
Okay, back up to item C, which is a proposed lot line adjustment of lots 1 through 4, block 3, Paradise View Addition. Oh, D, I'm running
Sorry.
on C.
Thank you.
I
He is a dog.
apologize.
It's all right.
Like I said, the digital device does betray you. So this is, D is a proposed lot line adjustment for lots 1 and 2, block 10 of Eddington First Edition subdivision. So,
I need to recuse myself from the vote at a potential interest of conflict.
Conflict of interest.
Conflict of interest.
see your digital device.
Digital device isn't functioning very good tonight, so.
Okay,
Go backwards.
so on item D, Sandra?
We're just approving, is
Yep.
it? Okay. Just making
Do we
sure
need to
aye.
move, we
Oh,
need to
right.
move to
Thank you.
approve the lot line adjustment request with a condition that the 20-foot wide utility easement be extended to provide sewer service to Lot 1 and be recorded with Latah County.
Second.
Okay, moved by Julia, second by Sandra. Now back to Sandra.
Aye.
Julia,
Aye.
Haley,
Aye.
Bryce,
Aye.
and Drew.
Abstain from the vote.
Abstain. Thank you. Okay, F is a Home Depot development agreement wherein, as part of the development of the Home Depot lot, to assure that the public infrastructure and public facilities are completed, Home Depot offers a $3 million surety that will be used in case Home Depot does not complete the public amenities that they're supposed to be completing. And if they don't, Moscow takes the $3 million and completes it on behalf of the city. So, Haley.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to pull it. I got the full review of this at the last week's Public Works and Finance meeting, and after sleeping on it, I am not changing what my perspective on in the conversation to recommend approval was, but I thought it was important to add some additional visibility as this is one of the steps that is a given, and I also wanted to make sure that the public understood that it's an approved use of the land on is it motor business right now as zoned, and so in an effort to be extra transparent, I just wanted to be clear, and if Bill can share a few more details about what it is. I was worried that some of the things I was seeing on that blasted digital device you were saying, people talking on Facebook implying that it was our chance to approve or deny the building of the building or what the building looked like, and that is not what this is. So, Bill, if you could help with some context, I guess.
I'd be happy to provide some background. So the council sees development agreements fairly often. Most often you see them associated with subdivision plats because traditionally in a subdivision plat, the way it's intended to work underneath state law is you would receive a preliminary plat approval You would then go construct your subdivision, set your monuments, complete all the public improvements, and then you would file the final plat once that's all completed. That's not how most jurisdictions process subdivisions. So they have, in lieu of completion of the improvements and in lieu of placing all the monuments, because typically developers may wish to have building permits issued before the completion of all the public improvements, we have a development agreement and monumentation agreements. And those are just financial security instruments to ensure that all the required public improvements are completed. The alternative option is the developer then just goes, completes the public improvements, and then seeks a building permit upon their completion. So that would be the alternative position. If a development agreement wasn't required for the project, then technically they'd be required to complete all the public improvements and then apply for the building permit for the actual structure. So this memorializes that obligation, provides that $3 million financial guarantee. It also details the provisions of the required warranty security. That is for that first year after completion of the public improvements, that we have a 50% warranty security of the value of those improvements. So should there be settlement or a failure of a roadway or something like that there are funds there to ensure that the developer would correct those deficiencies. So you most often see this with subdivision plats because they have streets involved. For private developments on sites, this is a little bit unique because the city and university have a desire for A Street to extend. Home Depot initially wanted to just have essentially where A Street would extend be the entry to their parking lot. So after discussions and with Home Depot between the university and the city, we discussed the long-term desire for A Street to continue and connect with Warbonnet. So they are constructing a substantial portion of A Street on the north edge of their site, and so that's kind of the scale of the public improvements that the majority of this warranty security covers. There are some sanitary sewer mains, storm water mains also included in that, but the bulk of the value there is for the extension of A Street so that it can continue to extend and ultimately make connection to Warbonnet at some point in the future.
And Mr. Mayor, can I ask, and you helped us understand this at the Public Works meeting. It's been in the plans for a long time to eventually be able to extend A Street up and beyond and have that all, even though it is all university land, it has been zoned for additional commercial activity, right?
Correct. It's been a long-term plan for the city to have A Street continue behind the mall eventually over time. You may recall back in the late 2010 to 15 time period when the Hawkins development was being discussed just across the state line. Actually, the city and the university jointly funded a master plan for the A Street corridor behind the mall as an alternate commercial location to where it'd be compatible with the adjacent commercial uses, and on this side of the line, where it could be served with utilities and sanitary sewer services, where those utilities were somewhat limited across the state line. So it has been planned for A Street to continue. The property was annexed and zoned motor business at that time, and then this first phase essentially is following that master plan, extending A Street.
Cool. Thank you. That's all I have.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question. So I understand the plan to extend A Street to Warbonnet, but there's no real timeline for that, right?
Correct. That was always going to be development driven because really this is about as far as A Street can go before the university needs to relocate the dairy farm and the lagoons that exist there, which they are currently discussing and have been for some time, but I think there is some momentum to look at potentially moving. But it wasn't going to be something that the city, at some points of time, we did consider pursuing a grant to make that connection so then the transit routing could be more logical rather than having to go up to Walmart and then turn around and come back down to the Pullman Highway. But we did not submit that application. But it is something that we've been planning for long term, but there is no current timeline for its ultimate completion.
And if I can have a second question.
Sure.
At what, with putting Home Depot in, the study said we're looking at about 600 additional car trips in that area. At what point do we reevaluate the traffic and the safety of the area?
So long term, in that master plan, we had a roundabout constructed that intersection. Just the additional traffic volume from Home Depot did not push it below service levels that would require them to construct the roundabout. We did look at that very carefully. They are doing some additional slip lanes to allow some freedom of movements. But really, in an area where we're seeing anywhere between 6,000 and 8,000 vehicles per day, that's, you're about a 10 or 100% increase in that area. But long term, once A Street connects to Warbonnet, and we might get more of that flow coming across that area, I think we'll be looking at trying to accomplish that roundabout at that time in the future.
Thank you.
Okay.
With that, then I move that we approve
Item F.
F. Thank you. I'm getting used to my double reader. Sorry, that we approve item F in the consent agenda. I guess we took it off, so it's not a consent agenda. I quite want to phrase that.
Just
Can we just say
move to
approve the
approve the
development
development agreement.
Thank you. Yes.
With Home
Okay.
Depot.
Thank you. I move we approve the development agreement with Home Depot.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Okay. Drew,
Aye.
Bryce. Aye. Julia,
Aye.
Sandra,
Aye.
Haley.
Aye.
Okay.
Thanks, Bill.
The consent agenda is finished. Next up is mayor's appointments. I have none tonight. After that, we have public comment for the next 15 minutes in 3-minute increments. We invite the public to come up to the podium and take their 3 minutes after stating their name and address and tell us what's on your mind, as long as it's not on tonight's agenda, nor pending before Planning and Zoning Commission or the Board of Adjustment. Any takers on public comment tonight? Okay. Next up is item 4, the West Palouse River Drive Property Study Memorandum of Understanding. Bill, you're back up.
Thank you, Your Honor. Counselors. So to provide a little bit of background, this thing buzzed, but
Technology's on our side tonight.
It is.
It's that time of year.
there we go. All right. A little frozen up there for a moment. So as council may be aware, in 2002, the city purchased a 44-acre property from Sherman Clyde, located on West Palouse River Drive. And that acquisition was intended for the future development of athletic playfields. That was a lot of once the Hamilton bequest funds were received, the city went through the dream team, looked at the indoor recreation facilities, outdoor aquatics facilities, and then the next was really those outdoor play fields as being the youth athletic facilities the city wished to develop and which were in short supply within the community. We spent a fair number of years working on a development plan for the property. Ultimately, at the end of the day, at that point in time, the estimated cost of development was $8 million. And the city did not have the funding available to complete it. So in 2011, the city chose to place that project on hold indefinitely. Shortly after that, we re-engaged conversations with the Musco School District. We had been talking about their 22-acre property at the corner of Joseph and Mountain View. And you may recall there was one softball field that got developed and then it got stalled at that point. We had a change of superintendent in the district. There was a concern that the district needed that for future school facilities, and they did not want to have any additional field development on that property that could preclude them from developing a school facility there at some point in time. After continuing conversations, when Dale Kleinert was the superintendent, we were able to come to an agreement. And I think it was partially in recognition of the fact that the district has all of their schools located really on that east side of town and in the future, and it probably wasn't large enough for a high school. And if they're going to build another elementary, they're probably going to be doing it maybe in a different location in the community. So we were able to work out an arrangement between the city and the district to develop that property for play fields. So that included the construction of one baseball field, 3 softball/youth baseball fields, 2 soccer lacrosse fields on the property, parking lot, concession, restroom building that we're all familiar with today. The Palouse River Drive property, this was kind of the last conceptual drawing we had. I think there were 2 baseball, 2 softball, Little League, and then 2 soccer. There was one that at this point in time, there was some discussion with the developer to the south about there's a little bit of a flat area, maybe being able to fit another field in there if the city were to fund the road and bridge construction to help gain access. But this was kind of the last conceptual layout for the development of that property. Obviously, you may be familiar with Joseph Street. This is what ultimately ended up getting constructed, except for the volleyball and basketball courts shown here. The parking lot was expanded there to the east to accommodate the facility, but that's pretty much what got developed on Joseph at that time. Through the Joseph property development, the district did retain the right to site an elementary school there if they wish to in the future. We were always kind of focusing on that south soccer field as being the one that we sacrificed. It was adjacent to the parking lots where it could be served by bus transportation. But that always has been a reservation that the district has held. We jointly developed it. We could put it to beneficial use for the time being, but at some point in time, if they needed it, they could place an elementary school there. They are having a conversation right now about potentially building a school within 5 years' time within the community. And they are hoping to have a better distribution of those schools to support the various neighborhoods around the community. Currently, both Lena and McDonald, as I mentioned, are located on the east side, as is the middle school, which makes that playfield site a little bit less desirable for a future school, concentrating them all in one location. Through conversations on the various other city and district topics, the superintendent and I began a conversation about the potential ability to locate a future elementary school on the city's West Bluester Drive property, potentially in conjunction with a joint development of that property with a city park, athletic playfields, and a school. We have a long history of joint property development and management, so the city sold the district the property for West Park Elementary at Garley Park. We own the parking lot. We sell them permits during the school year. But the park and the school have worked well together. Lena and Lena Whitmore Park are the same thing. The school district owns all the property there, but we were able to maintain it open as a city park, and we maintained it to add that amenity to the neighborhood. Euler Field, the youth center, skate park, as well as community playfields. We have a number of different projects where we've been great partners working with the district, and parks and schools are really great compatible uses, and you can share common facilities when they're not being used for a school. They're available for the park use. So parking lots are a big one that you can have that dual purpose. So this is the property. Again, it's 44 acres in size. We'd be looking for the school site to be probably somewhere in the southeast corner, but that's really the intent of the MOU, is to explore what could be done with the property to house both school as well as athletic playfields.
Bill, can I ask, Mr. Mayor, I just want to make sure I see the yellow lines, but that's the county's parcel lines. We are the blue Oklahoma looking.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, the blue line.
Parcel. Got it.
And since this photograph's taken, Conestoga has been extended across the property and runs down this either eastern boundary of the site. So we do have access to the property now, as well as utility services.
Thank you.
So the MOU, we have prepared draft MOU for the council's consideration. And really, it's just to have the city and district jointly fund a planning study to assess the feasibility of being able to accommodate both a school as well as some additional athletic playfields and park facilities on the property. We'll look at everything from pedestrian access, vehicular access and circulation, site grading, building, parking, park, athletic facility development, to really kind of understand how suitable, what are any potential mitigation measures we might need to consider there. We want to look at the whole situation. We are estimating that to be under $50,000. So underneath the MOU, we would share that cost equally between the city and the district. The city, as a property owner, we would be contracting with whatever consultant that we engage with. Just because we are the property owner at this point in time, and then the district and the city would jointly manage and direct the work of the consultant. So it's really before the matters here before the council for your consideration this evening. It's my understanding this will be for the school board at their meeting on Wednesday night of this week on the 22nd. They'll be considering it as well. With that, I'd be happy to try to answer any questions the council might have.
Julia.
I just love to see the city and the district working together. So I just wanted to say that I'm really excited about this proposal. I think the other joint projects have turned out really well. So.
And as you suggested, Bill, rough timeline kind of in this developmental stage?
So I would say it'd probably be 6 to 9 months to wrap it up.
Okay, for the study, and
guess.
then
Yep, and then we'll bring our report back to the council. We'll evaluate, does this work for both entities or not? What are the likely costs? How would we share those costs? We'd kind of work through some of those details and see whether it's something that both entities wish to pursue.
great, thanks.
I think it's great. I don't have any, that's all I'm going to say. I'm going to keep my comments short.
Bless you.
I'll also be short, but I am very much in favor of this. It's been going around for quite a while now, thoughts on where to get a school. And I think looking at what we have and what the district needs, I think it would be a really great partnership. And we still get some ball fields. So it's a win-win in my book. I hope the school board agrees.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'm excited as well. My understanding is the reason we're looking at the scope for an elementary school and not a high school is simply because of the footprint you would need for an entire high school facility. And so that's helpful context. for me, and I don't have concerns, and I would move. Okay. We approve the proposed memorandum of understanding with the Moscow School District.
Second.
Moved by Haley, seconded by Julia. Further discussion? Probably not. Julia,
Unless you want us to keep talking about how excited we are. Aye.
Bryce,
Aye.
Sandra,
Aye.
Drew,
Aye.
Haley.
Aye.
Okay, great. And lastly up, we have a discussion regarding the proposed Latah County Housing Authority.
Thank you, Your
Would you
Honor.
like
I'm
to
just
carry on
going
and
to do
introduce?
an introduction here. So Commissioner LaFortune reached out here several weeks ago wanting to get some time on the council agenda to talk about a housing authority. So I know Kathy's here along with Cass to talk about the proposal. And so I will turn it over to them at this point. So if you'd like to come on up.
There's another commissioner here too.
Yeah, we have John Bowman in the back as well.
Bowman's in there.
Hi, John.
It's just, is it? Nope. It's, where am I looking?
Perhaps some of the counselors who can carry a tune can hum the Jeopardy theme.
I'd like to think someone up here might be able to carry it.
Julia can.
I know that is not one of my talents.
I've heard your
I could
poems.
make up a
Heard your
A limerick, maybe.
Yeah, limerick.
technical
Haiku.
poem.
Yeah, haiku.
That's what we need.
Ooh,
Why is that not showing?
She's thinking, I can see the wheels turning.
Yeah, I got nothing.
You got nothing.
Trying to think of what rhymes with thumb drive.
Elementary school. We are so excitedly.
Nope, missed it.
You're doing a haiku. What is a haiku? 13?
575. Elementary school. Come on, that's a low hanging fruit.
I mean, elementary is 5.
Elementary, if you say.
Yeah.
squeeze another one.
Elementary school.
Maybe the Jeopardy theme song would have been better.
Maybe just a little Zen moment.
Tomorrow is World
Show
Meditation.
you pictures in Nepal.
Really? Oh, that's true.
One wonders if the county is busy trying to infect city servers with the virus on their USB.
I'm not going to pretend to be tech savvy. We'll let Bill figure that out. Thank you for the time today to talk to the mayor and the city council. This is a topic that has been bubbling up in my brain for a long time. I originally ran for county commissioner because I was concerned about the families that I was working with, how they were oftentimes one paycheck away from destitution. And, you know, it was like if their car broke down, for instance, then they couldn't drive the 10 miles into town to go to work. And if they couldn't go to work, then they couldn't make the car payment. And it was just this vicious cycle. And so housing has been something near and dear to my heart ever since I began as a county commissioner. About a year ago, we sicked our grant writer on this problem because she's amazing and she tackles any problem. And she said, well, what about the idea of a housing authority? And I didn't know anything about it. And I said, tell me more about it. And she did. And she started the ball rolling. She started talking to all the nonprofits in the area that are working on the housing issue. She talked to Nils with the Housing Trust. She talked to Casey as Sojourners, Family Promise, got everybody on board, and they said, yeah, housing authority is a great idea. I still didn't really know what it was, though. And so tonight, what I'd like to do is, if we can get the technology working, what I'd like to do is sort of present the concept of a housing authority. We're not signing any memorandums of agreement or anything tonight. I just want this to be an educational time. Casey's going to go over the reason why we need a housing authority in the town of Moscow, even though we're already doing a lot for housing insecurity in our area, what this extra tool could provide for us. And then I want you all to be thinking about that. I want you all on board because there's no way the county can do this without the city's cooperation and coordination. Housing authority is a separate governmental entity. Once we appoint, as either a city or a county, once we appoint those people on that housing authority, it's hands off and they get to do the work. They're not a taxing entity, so they can't raise taxes, but they are a governing board that could then apply for grants, accept gifts and or donations. I can think of many times over the last 5 years that if we had had a housing authority, it would have been a really, really good tool for us to have to address a specific housing need in our community. Did he get it working?
I don't know, but I'll wing it.
I'll let you go ahead.
We'll go old school.
Yeah, I mean, Bill, success or no success? Okay, well then I'll just do my best.
Open behind.
You'll just have to believe me on the data and the graphs. then.
We can share these with them
after
the fact.
Thank you.
Yes.
That'd be great. Thank you.
So again, thank you for giving me time to discuss a housing authority in Moscow and Latah County. So I just want to say, for keeping it super simple, right? On one hand, what we have is what I'm interested in as the executive director of Sojourners Alliance. We have emergency housing, we have transitional housing, we have low-income housing, we have affordable housing, and then there's everything else, the stuff the private market tends to take care of, not so much that stuff. So Sojourners directly supplies the emergency and transitional accommodations through various programs. And in my opinion, our programs are highly successful. We're serving a record number of people per year compared to our past. But from my perspective, the challenge remains that our pipeline is impacted when we're trying to move people beyond our services to then low income and affordable options that are stable and on their own. So some current examples, just if you're not familiar with them, are like Hillside Village, Mountain View Apartments, Edenmore, Camas Village. Those are more the low income options that base rent based on their people's income. Generally speaking, in Moscow, the vacancy rates are under 2%. Typically, what is thought of as healthy rates is between 5 and 8%. So, we have that sort of a situation here. So that means that our process of transitioning people to housing is much slower because of that constraint there. So, and that's just for those that qualify, right? So very often I have a group of people that struggle to qualify for anything. And I have a few solutions for that, but again, that is limited.
Can I ask you a clarifying question?
Sure.
Quick? When you say the vacancy rate's under 2%, you mean for the low-income housing or for all
Rentals
housing?
generally.
All housing. Okay, thanks.
Yes, rentals generally. Then that's based upon some reports that I can share.
I just wanted
Yeah.
to make sure.
So what I'm going to go over today, as if we were looking at slides, is just sort of the growth that we have experienced here in Latah County and Moscow. Just very recently, median sales prices have come down, but they're still near their, and this is purchasing housing, right? But they're still near their historic highs. You can't, you just go to January 22 and you can't find a higher price going back before that than a median price. Our housing stock is sort of aging, relatively speaking. If I could show you a graph, but there would be this thing that shows, when all the housing was built in which decade. And you'll see the larger bands in the past, right? In the 70s, in the 60s, in the 80s, and maybe even the 90s. But especially since the financial crisis, those bands are very narrow. So you can see that history of it really slowing. And that's a general US trend, but we have to work on that. Okay, so since we don't have slides, there's no point in me going over the summary. So the main point I want to make here about our population is that we are unique, right? If you were to look at the graph, we have a big section on our bar graph in the 20 to 34 age group. Not unsurprisingly, but if you look at Nez Perce, Idaho, Clearwater, sort of the ones around us, it's very unique. So what the result of that is that, so this sort of thing has consequences. So when we're under constraints, so whether that be financing, land use, or construction resources, the profit maximizing market is going to focus on where they maximize their return. And so what you see a lot of what's getting built is you see Empire, you see Republic, and that's more focused on that 20 to 34 student demographic. So that's just one contributing factor to why the market doesn't focus on maybe what we might want them to. And so then my next slide would be a bar graph that illustrates that.
Casey, a moment of clarification.
Yes.
That's just for our area, correct? The 24 to 30. That's not, you're speaking just strictly to our area. For the-
Latah County.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Latah County.
Relative to the counties
Yes.
around us. Yeah. That we're, I mean, one could argue that we're kind of like a resort town, right? And resort towns often run into this problem in terms of having workforce housing and having housing for the lower income bracket. So there's those similarities. So again, a graph I could show based upon Points Consulting, a report from 2022. Between now and 2032, the forecast for needed homes in Latah County is almost 160. Per year. Yeah, per year. Which, points to this housing demand. And I would argue that in addition to that growth that we're going to see and the potential trend of not meeting that growth, I'd say we're also underserving our current population. And so I'd like to make that argument. So again, then the next slide I would show would be that thing that I already described about the housing stock, how it slowed down, and the larger bands are in our past decades. Another one I would show would be the permitting that has taken place in the 5 counties in our region. So comparing 2010 to 2020, single-family permits have gone up in most counties, ours included, but where it has really slowed down is in multifamily permits. So specifically in 2010, there were 48 multifamily permits in Latah County, and in 2020, there were only 16. So again, speaking to that slowdown of that type of housing. And then another graph I would show would be a line graph over time showing how we are not keeping up this. So now this is not just speaking about Latah County specifically, but our region, the CETA region, how our cumulative growth in multifamily units is lagging behind both Idaho as a state and the country and the U.S. in general. All right.
Sorry, Casey, I have
Yes.
a brain caught up
Yeah,
like that.
sure. I'm also just trying to stay under time, so
You're
I'm
doing
going
great.
fast. Yeah.
So as for the CETA portion, if we're saying the cumulative growth, are we talking cumulative population growth in CETA is lagging, or the cumulative
No,
increase in housing?
Multifamily
Got it.
housing.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
our growth in multifamily housing.
Got it. Thank you.
And the graph would illustrate that better.
All good.
Fine, you can breathe. It's
Yeah, you're
Okay,
doing great.
great.
Yeah.
No worries.
Yeah, well, I also want to leave times for more discussion. Yeah.
For basing off last council meeting, we still got 3.5 hours.
Oh, okay.
And we don't get paid.
Oh, well,
That's just
actually, I think I need to take a bathroom break.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll slow it down a little bit then, if you're telling me I have plenty of time.
Yeah.
So in general, Latah County is a pretty affordable place to live, generally speaking, relative to the rest of the U.S. Again, I could show you a graph that shows some data. In comparison to the counties around us, to the state of Idaho, and to the U.S. Generally, we are all overall and in grocery, health, utilities, and transportation, we are below the index of 100. However, where we are not below the index of 100 is in housing, where we're at 111.3. So this is sort of a pain point for us. So again, this is not to argue that everything's terrible in Latah County. No, I think this place is pretty great. Just for whatever reason, for a multitude of factors, there's this lingering issue about housing being unaffordable relative to the state of Idaho and U.S. Although Idaho has this issue relative to the U.S. too, so maybe that's part of our issue for whatever that reason is. So also just to point out with a graph, but I can again describe it in words, that Moscow and Latah County rank pretty high in terms of the ratio between median home values and median household income. So this just speaks to people's buying power in our area. So just to give you a sense of the state of Idaho, the ratio of median home value to median household income in 2020 is 4.0. In the U.S. generally, it's 3.6. In Moscow, it's 5.7, and in Latah County, 4.6. So these measures are very imperfect. They're not. It's very hard to boil this complex thing down to one number, but I think where its explanatory power does lie is in that relative number to our state and to the U.S. generally. And then I have some others for other counties there, but only the city of Riggins outranks Moscow in terms of that in this study. So the next slide I would have would basically talk about cost burdened households in terms of their housing costs. So it is relatively not a big problem in the homeownership categories. Where it is largely a problem is your lowest two income brackets of renters. So extremely low income and very low income. I'm just going to describe it generally, but you have anywhere between 4,000 to 6,000 households in Latah County that fall in that category. So extremely burdened means more than 50% of your income goes to your housing, and just regular cost burden means it's somewhere between 30 to 50. So we have thousands of households in our region that suffer that. So this is not a homeless issue, right? This is not people who are going without. This is usually people that have a place to live, but they're just a disproportionate amount of their income is going towards their housing. So that just speaks to, again, this issue of housing cost. Yeah, and a lot of our current solutions, as the private market does, and some of our other charitable solutions focus on home ownership, right? Habitat and Moscow Affordable Housing Trust, they're working on a different margin here than I think the Housing Authority would focus on. So some recent things that have taken place. So there's been the purchases of the Hillcrest Motel, the Idaho Inn, which then turned into Empire, and the mobile home parks out there on Palouse River Drive, and everyone's aware of that. I'm not going to get into that. But these sort of ongoing pain for lower income options. So just as an example, what the former Idaho Inn, now Empire, their prices have actually come down, and they used to be like $1,200, $1,300. They're actually, when I looked recently, they were listed as $895 to $995. So the market, I think, is getting the hint that those are too high.
For a hot plate studio.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So the reason I'm pointing these out is these are small places that used to be a motel room. One would think that, well, if anything is going to be affordable, if anything's going to be for this market segment that we're interested in, it would be these smaller places, right? Well, no, because they're focusing on the student market. So they're charging between $895 and $995. And then there's the Alston Street Alley developments, right? That I think are a great idea. However, again, I would want them to be for low income people, but they are charging between $800 and $995. So let's take that as sort of a base entry level, $800 a month, and pair that with the cost burden concept of 30%. So if you weren't going to be cost burden and pay $800 a month, you're going to need at least $32,000 a year, right? Okay. So then if I could show you a graph, I would show you where our income brackets are in Latah County. And our largest bracket in Latah County is 0 to $34,999, right? It's just under 35% of our households.
So question
fall
on
in that
one,
bracket.
does that include students as part of that bracket? Is it artificially skewed low as a
Yeah,
result?
that's hard to tell exactly. I'd have to dig in and go into points consulting. So yes, I do think that the student thing will overstate some of this. I think that's absolutely true. And we'd have to dig into it to say exactly the extent to which it does. But I think this speaks to the idea that there is a good portion of our population that is in that income bracket, and these sorts of little projects that are great ideas, and I'm always for constructing more housing, but what the result has been in the market is it's still not at the price points that serve those income brackets. That's really the main takeaway. So yeah.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yeah, sure.
So what is being provided, what's being built, even though it's behind, right? We're not producing enough still. No matter what we're producing isn't applying to what you're talking about, that 30 to 50% of people that are in this Where half
Probably
of
around
it-
30%. Yeah,
Okay.
probably around 30% if we factor in this overstatement from the student population. Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I mean,
Just as a-
students still need housing,
Well, yes.
and it's not cheap to be a
Yes.
student.
Yes. But again, I mean, yeah, these things are very complex. Are we talking about students? Are we talking about workforce? Are we talking? Yeah, I mean, and you really have to dig in there. This is, yeah, broad strokes. So establishing a housing authority. So let's move on to that. So what is it? Well, a housing authority, I'm just going to read it so that I make sure I don't say anything inaccurate, is an entity created by the legislature that is allowed by the legislature and established in the Idaho Code, both for cities and counties. So to ensure that when there is a shortage of safe and sanitary accommodations that low-income folks can afford, or when there's abundance of unsanitary, unsafe, congested, or crowded living quarters. So I don't think we have so much of these unsafe and crowded and congested, but the key being there that accommodations that low-income folks can afford. So that was the case I was trying to make there, that we are falling short on that for various reasons. So therefore, the local government can and should step in to provide the needed resources in the form of public funds to establish housing that fills the gap that can't be filled by private enterprise. So I've already talked to Bill about this, and he said, hey, this is a great idea, but we have no money to help you, which is great point taken. But, that is not necessary for the housing authority. It can draw from a lot of different places. It can draw from IHFA. It can draw from donations. It can get federal grants. It can get community development block grants and so on, right? So I view it as an entity that just will be laser focused on this issue and will be looking at all options to try to solve it, which, as far as I can tell, an entity does not exist currently for this area. So the powers of the housing authority are essentially anything, and I think Kathy said some of this, are anything you can think of that would enable the correction of a housing situation / crisis. I try to avoid crisis because it's hyperbolic maybe, but the situation that we find ourselves in. So, it can buy land and buildings, it can demolish, it can renovate, it can lease, manage, operate, and it can build housing and facilities. It can loan, finance, invest, and issue bonds. It can plan developments and investigate poor housing situations. I just got back last month from a conference put on by IHFA about housing and economic development, and I spoke to someone who runs one of these in another county, and they pointed out that one thing so they actually have not been able to get so much construction where they are, but she said one thing that they do is the city / county offers incentives to developers to get special exemptions for zoning density, so they can get higher density, and then in exchange for that, they offer some percentage of their units as affordable units that then get managed by the housing authority. So that is, and I said, oh, really? I thought we couldn't do that. I heard, no, well, we're not requiring it. We are incentivizing. So that is allowed. So that's just one example. I mean, the space would have to be explored. So this part I did not write. I'm relying upon Christina Mangiapane for this because she knows more about all the rules associated with this. So I'm just going to read this verbatim. So some of the rules associated with the housing authority include that the housing must be made available to low-income folks at a minimum percentages. So that has to be its focus. But also key there, though, that not all, right? So and again, there's various schools of thought on this not concentrating low income all in one place to kind of break it up. There may be benefits to that. Yeah, that's a school of thought. And there's history that speaks to that. So the authority can be created by a resolution of the county commissioners, either of their own design or after a petition of at least 25 signatures. Once established, the county commissioners appoint 5 or 7 housing authority commissioners who cannot be employed by or be an officer of the county. They don't get paid except for reimbursements required to perform their public service. They can hire staff, carry out their goal to carry out their goals. They can use the PA's office, but often retain their own legal counsel. While they can issue bonds, which is a perk of governmental entities, they cannot levy or collect taxes, and all revenue must be used for the purpose of the housing authority. It cannot be profit that gets reappropriated elsewhere in the county budget. So it's its own little cordoned off piece that is focused on that goal. But it can be invested, so to get more money to then build more housing. And then, of course, there's the sort of public transparency side of things, where there's going to be minutes, reports, meetings, financials, so that everything's on the up and up and everyone knows what's going on, as you guys do here. So I would have a slide, and I didn't intend to read down the slide, but basically the Public Housing Authority can bring a lot of functions under one sort of jurisdiction or roof, as it were, with public representation, with that accountability that comes with that, and sort of some of the legal bits that come along with it in terms of being able to do all the things that it can do that are harder for a private entity. So I do think that there will be some, I'm going to read them, but I'm going to finish my thought here, that there will be likely some overlap with current private charitable efforts. I can imagine some possibly with sojourners, but I think these are all details that can be worked out. So, it can provide subsidized housing, it can provide rental assistance, it can provide community development, so partnerships with private, I think, especially here, would be a big part of it if it were to work. I'm not a city planner, but I think it's theoretically possible that, for instance, like the Jackson Street lot over there, that is always struggling,
Legacy Crossing area.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, theoretically, right, it could, if there were going to be some big thing there and the Public Housing Authority were involved, Public Housing Authority is obviously not interested in commercial, right? It would be interested in housing. So the bottom floor could be private commercial, and then that's what they focus on. And then the top could be the housing, something like that. I'm just trying to create that vision. Which then develops a piece of land that has struggled to be developed through private means. So that is it. Thoughts, questions, concerns?
I've got two, Casey. Thank you for sharing with us. I'm curious how many housing authorities are active in the state that we know of, and when the last time one was created. And the reason I ask, as Kathy comes to the podium, I know that Urban Renewal Agency Code and the abilities of URAs has been in the crosshairs at the state legislature for a while. And so I'm curious if this is for some reason seen as a more tasteful mechanism for whatever reason the legislatures feel, but I
More so than you're going to lose me on the urban renewal, because I'm not part of the urban renewal board. We definitely have division of labor at the
Love
county
it,
when it comes to things. So you'd have to ask Tom about that, because I'm not sure. I believe the most recent housing authority that was formed was the one in Teton County.
Okay.
And that is a joint housing authority between Teton County, the cities of Teutonia, Driggs, and Victor.
Cool.
And so it's a joint, and it's partially what I'm modeling my dream after, is the cooperation that I've seen down there between the cities and the county. And that's because we want to see responsible development. Nobody at Latah County wants to see a housing development that mirrors what happened at Syringa. We don't want spot development. We want to make sure that whatever kind of housing development goes in, it's either renovation of already existing housing. If we had a housing authority 5 years ago, would Latah County now, or would the housing authority now own Hilltop Valley? I would hope so. So we're not interested in putting in something that's a spot development. It has to be able to access city water and sewer. The reason we want to make it, instead of just a Moscow housing authority, the reason we'd like to make it a county-wide housing authority is, as time goes on, and we're working actively on this as well, the smaller communities within Latah County are also building up their infrastructure for water and sewer. And as those build up, then they become more eligible for a housing type of development. So I think that's the most recent one. Some of the ones down in Ada County in the Boise, Treasure Valley area have been around for decades, addressing needs. It's really interesting to go in and look at, and I would encourage all of you to do this as you're educating yourself about this. Go look at the Teton County Housing Authority website. Go look at the one in Boise. Look at all the other ones that exist. I think there's one more. I don't think there's any other in the northern part of the state.
I think there's one in Bonner.
Is there one in Bonner, but there's not one in Coeur d'Alene?
Interesting.
And I've been going around to all these different meetings. Like I went to the housing workshop up in Coeur d'Alene with Cody back a little while ago, and I was like, interesting. They don't have a housing authority, but they have all these other things. And that's the other thing is the housing authority isn't going to come in and fix this problem. It's gonna take all of us working together and little bits and pieces. We need our housing trust. We need Habitat for Humanity. We need some of the low income housing that we have. We definitely need sojourners. We need to expand our sober living opportunities for people in treatment courts. But we also need to address this demographic so that when people transition out of those types of housing, out of that emergency and temporary housing, they have a place to go that's affordable.
Have you reached out to the other communities in Latah County?
Not yet. I wanted to make sure that we had a green light from the city council. First people I reached out to were, the nonprofits involved in housing. Christina did a lot of that work before me. And she wanted to make sure that everybody was on board there. Then I was like, well, we should reach out to city leadership. So we reached out to city staff first. Golly, that was a couple months ago, I feel like now that we met. And then they put us on your agenda for 2 weeks ago, and that agenda got full. And so now we're here less than a week from when my daughter gets married, and we're presenting to you again.
Great.
Right, just speak.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, like I said, I went to that conference and I actually met the people involved in the Teton County Housing Authority there, and watched a presentation on some developments that they have completed. And
They're on their third right now. aren't
yeah,
they?
yeah. So, I just was trying to pick their brain to the extent I could, bothering them as they were done. And they said they could put me in contact with some consultants that they used, to get all these things off the ground. And, and they seemed very open to being reached out to about, sort of how they were successful.
Mm-hmm.
And how long have they been around? I'm sorry, I missed that part.
I'd have to double check that.
Okay. So
Yeah.
I think there were fits and starts for the
Yeah,
Teton
sure.
one. I think they started in, I want to say 2016 and kind of floundered for a while.
Yeah.
Didn't have the best, hired an executive director that kind of sat there and didn't do much, which happens with executive directors and things like that.
Yep.
And so that's why I think it's really important to get everybody on board and really be thinking about who would we want to appoint. And the joint authority I'm down there, like the 3 small cities each have a seat on that, they were allowed to appoint somebody, and then the county appoints a certain number too. I'd have to look at the memorandum of agreement. It's changed.
Thanks.
But I think they really got up and got going in 2019 after kind of a fit and a start.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the presentation, and thank you for winging it without the technology. Appreciate that. I guess it's more so just an insight rather than a question, but I'm curious to hear how you respond. There was so many different stakeholders involved in this issue, and so many different people that have clearly vested interest in promoting more affordable housing in Moscow for a wide variety of the population. I guess it would be making sure that everybody is all on the same page of collaboration, right? And what I have in mind here is we have the Fair and Affordable Housing Commission, and I would hate to see that the authority doing something or going a different direction than the commission is going. And so I hope that there's continual collaboration among all stakeholders involved on this issue within the city and within the county. So.
Yes, I agree. I didn't get into it so much because I didn't want to get into what happens once we establish it, but establishing it does nothing, right? There's lots of work that comes after that. And there need to be commissioners that are appointed. So I would say that those people that are on that commission would be the first place to look and see if they're interested in becoming commissioners as an example.
Great. Thank you.
You can't be a city employee, you can't be a county employee, you can't be a city councilor. You have to be independent of that. In looking at the structure of some of the other authorities, there's usually a developer, There's usually a realtor on there. There's somebody that can do some of the legal mumbo jumbo. We already have some samples of memorandums of agreements from the Teton County that our legal counsel has been looking at. But to expect either Mia or Bill to take on that in addition to everything else that they have going is probably not going to happen. So they probably have to hire their own legal counsel. And that's something Bill was very clear about from the beginning. It was like, well, yeah, but we don't have any money to give you for this. And we have certainly no ongoing staff time. And we understood that.
Drew, did you have something?
Yeah, I didn't know if,
Well,
okay.
we'll get through these questions and then Nils can come up and introduce himself.
Okay. Yeah, one, like everyone said, thank you for coming. I think everyone up here and probably watching and the crowd knows that this is something that should be top of mind awareness. We can't solve it nationally, but we can definitely solve it from a regional level. And I think this is the first step. Even without the slides, I was following the data. I think, thanks for thoroughly explaining that. But one thing that I found when talking about just housing in general with the general public when we get questions is a lot of people aren't on the same terms of how the federal government might define something based on state or, there's lots of people spinning their wheels not in the right direction. And there's the best intention there. It's not any ill will towards them or anyone thinking about these issues. But then also too, looking at like a slide deck with graphs, that takes a special skill to comprehend the data if someone's not explaining it to you. Because again, you have to know the terminology to follow that. So I think one thing that could help with this, and I work on this on another side in my not my private life, but outside of council, my night job. Infographics are incredibly, I think, important to communicate like large quantities of information to help that. And that's one thing I think it should look at is somehow the education piece for everyone in general, because it's just not going to go past that. And we need people paddling in the right direction. And so we have two great universities here regionally we have a lot of capability. And so thinking about how to quantify the graphics or the data into graphics, I think is important. And then similarly, I meant to ask you why you're saying this, but when this housing authority, when they can receive money, you talked about they can invest it. Is there any stipulations like what's the difference between that and a private developer? Or is there any?
There are some key legal differences and in terms of that it's a public entity that have appointed people and all that sort of stuff. But no, I'm an economist, so I come at this from the money side of things. Yeah. And what this is it is a financing entity. So how is it different than a private entity? The main difference being that it's not trying to maximize its return. So it's a financing house that's not focused on what's my return and should I put this money in the stock market or should I build housing in Moscow? At what where's my return? It's bringing money together, bringing all the resources, bringing all the know-how, focused on this singular idea of building more housing that is affordable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think I agree with you, but I think just for terms, probably just reach out and we can have a longer conversation because I have like a myriad of questions that go off of that.
I wonder if it's any different than, any other governmental entity that invests their funds. Like, when we received our ARPA funds at the county, we invested those money so that we could earn interest on those so we could maximize then what we were using that money for as far as projects, et cetera.
Right. Like the only thing.
No different than the city putting money into investment funds. If you're holding on to it, like you've got a project that's coming up in 6 months or a year, and you've already got the funds for that, you put the funds aside in an interest-bearing account, you're going to make money on that. So then you can do more work when the time comes.
Right, and so that's part of it. And the other,
Not an economist.
right? Nor am I. But the other part then too is a private developer when he's getting funding his capital stack, their capital stack, I'll say, and they're setting up all that whole process, which is usually the upfront fee to get the ball rolling, which usually is the most burdensome, and it's designed that way economically. We won't go down that path, but. Would the Housing Authority capital stack be different? Is there a way for it to be different based on the loan that it would need?
I would require more research on that. So that would be a thing that we
Okay.
could talk about. And
Yeah,
and research
okay.
and-
That's why I'm
Yeah.
I'm going to start. I mean,
Yeah.
I do this every.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so my mind's spinning
Yeah, I understand.
very excitedly, by the way,
Okay.
but not in a bad way. And I could ask a lot. I'm just gonna stop there. Thank you for coming. So.
Okay, Nils, you've been standing there for a while. Please introduce yourself and tell us what you think about Housing Authority.
Nils Peterson, Moscow Affordable Housing Trust, 510 West Palouse River Drive. I spent my morning volunteering with the Idaho Food Bank because I believe hunger is a housing problem. People are spending too much money on their housing, and the thing they sacrifice is food or medical or other sorts of things in their life because the consequence of not making your rent is too severe. So with that said, the comment that Moscow is a resort town, I've believed that for quite a while. And I got there by looking at the housing prices in the counties that have resorts, Sandpoint, Valley, Blaine, Teton. We were often in those five. And I figured out why that was. We are a resort community. A resort community is where people come and they bring money from outside sources and they spend it locally. They're not spending money they earn locally. In this case, it's our students. They bring in grants, mom and dad, loans, and they spend it on housing in our community. And they skew the housing market so that what should be the low-end entry houses are instead held by an investor and rented, which means that people who are earning money in our economy can't buy those exact same houses. So we are a resort community and we need to think like we're a resort community. Moscow Affordable Housing Trust was making some good headway before COVID. In 2020, we sold 3 houses. And then with the price and the fluctuations, et cetera, in the COVID and COVID recovery, we stumbled. This year, I believe we will produce 10% of all the new houses built in Moscow. I don't know that we'll do that next year also, but we're striving to do that. Those are houses targeted at the workforce in Moscow. That's not some of the conversation that you just heard, but I think we need housing at every strata because it shifts people around. People who were renting move up into owning, making new spaces for people who are renting. I first learned about Housing Authority from my counterpart in Blaine County, probably in 2016 or 17. And I support the idea. And I support it for several reasons. I think that there can be a useful collaboration between the Land Trust and the Housing Authority. One of which is we have a problem. We are signing leases for 99 years. We need to guarantee that the Housing Trust will be here or its successor will be here to maintain our responsibility in that lease. What my counterpart in Blaine County does is partners with the Housing Authority. One could believe the Housing Authority, being a governmental, quasi-governmental entity, has a chance of surviving longer than any given nonprofit might. So having it available for us as a successor organization could be part of our strategy for success. So I hope you will advance this idea. Thank you.
Thanks, Nils. Good points.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question for Kathy, and then I think I'm fresh out of thoughts in this little head of mine. Yeah, so it's not meant to be a gotcha.
That's okay.
What is your answer when someone asks, is a housing authority the proper role of government to
Is
play?
it the proper role of government? I think it was Casey that pointed this out to me when we were talking a few months ago. If we were waiting for the private sector to solve this, we've been waiting for a long time, and it's not getting better, it's getting worse. The income disparity between being able to, afford a house versus being at the food bank because your rent is so steep that you can't afford food, that problem is just getting bigger in our community. If we're waiting for the private sector to fix it, if we were waiting even for the local government without the idea of a housing authority to fix it, the Fair Housing Commission is full of really good, thoughtful people. They would have fixed it by now if they could have. Is this the only solution? Is this the answer? It's part of it. There's only a few things that we can do as a county government, and this is one of them.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
I just want to comment that I understand the idea that Moscow is different and that we have a unique situation with students, but I would very much hesitate to paint students as not working here, because I would guess that the vast majority of students work while they go to school, and having two seniors in high school right now, I can tell you that mom and dad are not usually able to just fund a kid in school. And so I just hesitate to say that about students, because I think a lot of them are bearing the financial burden of going to school here.
Right. And students need to eat too.
I'd really like to tag on to that and say that at the Vandal Food Pantry, I get to run that. And every day I have, even during the summer over this last week, over 20 students a day come in, and I average about 26 students a day coming in. And there's students that are working. Some of them work for me and they're using it. And some of them are graduate students. So it's a whole gamut of people out there.
And with that, I would move that we accept the report. What is this?
We will send you the slides.
Take action
I
as
will
deemed
make a point of
appropriate.
sending those to.
We
Who should I
accept the
send those
report
to?
and await the,
And express interest in formulation of the housing authority.
okay, we accept the report and express interest in the formulation of the housing authority.
Thank you. It's wonderful to have your support. That means a lot to us at Lake County.
Thanks for all the work on it. That's grueling.
Okay, so
I will send them to Moscow City Council. I don't know how.
Council at,
Okay, so the conversation for those at home that didn't hear is the graphics will be made available on Sojourner's website for those who would like to go have a look.
Yeah, and I will see if I can get the same thing on the Lake County website.
So we've got a motion and a second. So Sandra,
Aye.
Bryce,
Aye.
Drew,
Aye.
Julia,
aye.
Haley.
Aye.
Okay,
Thanks,
great. Thanks so
Casey.
much,
Thanks,
everybody.
Nels. Thanks, Kathy.
We move along now to the long neglected reports. So Haley, shall we start with you?
Yeah,
Mercifully?
I feel under the weather, so there's nothing there's nothing to share. That's my report, is we are all surviving at this point. So that's what I can offer.
Okay.
Cool. Sandra?
Yes, I'm trying to dig out my notes. I was hoping Haley would take longer. Okay, got them.
Yeah, no.
I'm not going to go into everything I've been to because we were here a long time last week or last time. I don't want to be here that late. But let me start off by saying go Bears.
Bears is
Baseball
right.
team, the boys baseball team won the state championship. The girls softball team, I believe, won their first state game in years. And we had track and field athletes that were out winning medals and championships. So it was a really great day it's always a great day to be a Bear, but especially this week, it's been especially good. I'm just going to go with my notes here. I know that Humane Society of the Palouse is sort of a city entity, and we had a kitten shower yesterday, and it was spectacular. And I'm not even a cat person, but it's a great program that teaches about how to volunteer. And if you want all this, you can go to the Humane Society of Duluth website, but how to volunteer. It talks about one cat that doesn't get spayed or neutered, what that turns into. You get to hold kittens for a little while until they get too tired and then they need a rest, which is also really sweet. It's a really nice day. It's a fundraiser, but it's also a great teaching event. So it's held every May because that is the height of kitten season. So it was great to be a part of that. Moscow Arts Commission met this week, and possibly I didn't report on them before, but it's all about the same things right now. We are down to the top 3 murals for the water building, and we got to see some sample art from folks that are in that top 3, and it's spectacular. I'm very excited to see what they narrow it down to. And then, of course, the June Extravaganza Art Walk event is coming up rapidly. That's always fun. I know I'm taking a little thunder for the mayor, so I'm not going to say a whole lot about Arbor Day, except that it was great. Arbor Day is just awesome. But trees were planted in Gormley Park. We had a nice little presentation. And the best part was we had the West Park students help us plant some trees. And it was fun. And I walk by there a lot, and the trees are still going strong. We always worry about that, but their trees are still going strong, which is great. Let's see. Ren Fair was a great success. Great for all those that turned out. It's at our city park, so I think of that as a city event. Airport, yay, but the mayor will get into that more. But it was great to see a tour. I know, but it was really cool to see what's going on out there. I know some of you in the audience were there, and it was fun to see you. I'm excited for what that has to offer. 1912 Development, this weird company called KNIT, is doing some great work at the 1912 Center.
They're weird.
And good. It's been really great to be on the development team and to look at all the projects moving forward on that 3rd floor. Can't wait to get a kitchen in and all the other events. So it's been really fulfilling to be a part of that and to see the progress. And I'm sure if Jenny hasn't reached out to you for fundraising yet, she will very soon. Historic preservation, also making progress there. I know there was hope to have a university district, thanks to a couple of classes at the University of Idaho. They've been making some headway there. We're still a ways off from even really looking at that, but it's fun to know that there is headway being made, and it possibly could get a historic district there. And then the Moscow Fire Department had graduation. And I feel like it was just yesterday, but it was about 3 weeks ago, I think. And that's always one of my favorite events to go to. It was a graduation and then a highlight and some awards for the great work that they have done. And we're so lucky to have such an amazing volunteer force here in our town. And I'm truly, truly grateful for the work that they do. And it always gives me goosebumps to watch them graduate and be awarded for their truly life-saving efforts.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask, I have one thing I was going to add, and then I'm going to slip out the side door. There was one thing of note. ITD came and gave us an update, Idaho Transportation Department at the Transportation Commission meeting. And the highlights include the Thorn Creek to Moscow stretch should be open fully by, if I understood, by November, but expect some significant delays in the month of July for about 6 weeks, extending into August. At the tie-in where the new intersection will meet the old 95. And so I suggested they're going to reach out to U of I and some other things because we know we'll have UI bound and things like that. But since we have some people in the audience who probably do Costco runs on occasion, I thought you would all enjoy knowing that the end is nigh in a good way. So
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to slide out the back door.
Good night, Haley.
All right. I had Farmers Market Commission, and they had these great stickers that they got at a conference that said farmers markets don't just happen, which if you've ever been around the Farmers Market Commission or Amanda Argona, you would know very well because they work so hard on getting everything right for the farmers market. I also got to table at the farmers market for the commission on Saturday, and Julia Brannon, the artist for the new poster, signed posters that day, and that was great, very well received. So I think that Amanda Argona might have a few extra copies of the free poster. So if you want one, contact her. I also got to go to the chamber dinner, the Moscow Chamber of Commerce dinner this week, which was fun, and they raised a lot of money. And I I ate a $50 piece of cake. That was my donation.
Yep.
But it's a good event supporting businesses in the area and the chamber itself. Sandra stole my thunder because yes, go Bears. I did spend a couple days at the regional track meets where both the boys and girls teams did fantastic. So it was really fun to see those runners out there. And that is my last track meet. So you can be sad for me or you can be happy for me. I don't know.
We're happy for you.
They are long. And this week I have Sustainable Environment Commission.
True.
Yeah, so this last Friday was Bike to Work, May 17th. So we had Pathways Commission out there doing a great job always. Very excited. Thank you for city staff showing up. I see Cody's out here and Lauren's there as well, supporting people biking to work. Always a great event. Also on June 11th is when we're going to be doing our bike tour starting at Mountain View Park for Pathways Commission. So I'll put in the plug for that. If you'd like to get out and do that, highly recommend it. I've been twice and they always do a great job. June 1st is also, I saw John Kimberling the other day, and there's the safety fair on June 1st coming up over at East City.
Eastside Marketplace.
Yeah, East Side Marketplace. Sorry, it was East and something, but over there, and always a great event. It's going to be the 20th anniversary, I think, of that happening. So
Say June 1st?
June 1st. Yep, Saturday, June 1st, and then one thing I just want to thank Parks and Rec staff. They've been getting a lot of emails from people that are using the facilities, and I've also been getting a lot of those emails. And the things that have happened and are happening, I can assure you that our staff is working very diligently to resolve things. And so, if you're still upset about it, be patient. People are working hard to resolve those things, and grateful that we have staff that care about making a difference. So that's all I have.
Thanks. Bryce.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So yeah, it's been about a month since we've given our last reports, and so on April 16th, I went to the Human Rights Commission meeting where we discussed general business, and we actually have a Human Rights Commission meeting tomorrow. So I'm going to kind of wait to see what other energy we can drum up for the next report in the next council. But staying consistent there. Had planning and zoning also in that same week about a month ago where we conducted general business. The Planning and Zoning Commission meeting is canceled this week. So. And other than that, about a month ago, the mayor and I and Drew attended an event on campus on Earth Day that was put forth by Sunrise on the Palouse, which is a student-led organization to discuss and advocate on behalf of the climate emergency and climate crisis that we're currently facing. So we attended that. Other than that, been just staying busy on the Palouse, and this is one of my favorite times of the year, as I'm sure for everybody on the Palouse, mid-May through mid-June, just when the hills turn spectacular. So hopefully everybody's getting outside on their bikes or walking or just taking it all in. So, yeah.
Okay, I had a list of things. As Bryce indicated, there was Earth Day back on the 22nd of April, and spoke to the group there who are very much advocates about climate change and what can be done to mitigate that. Spent a lot of time talking to high school government classes, 7 sections across 2 days here in council chambers. So the high school government classes came in and got their ears filled with what actually goes on in local government.
And Becky-isms.
Well, that's part of the corruption of the youth, I suppose. Anyway, and the Association of Idaho Cities had their district meeting on the 17th, worked through some planning exercises, and were brought up to date on what happened to municipalities in Boise courtesy of the legislature this year. Always a mixed bag on that one. Arbor Day, great. The kids planting trees was, maybe you saw it on the front page of the Daily News, but there they were. Little girl putting dirt on the tree. And
Not on the mayor.
no, although my shoes were right there in the picture if you look close. The fire department graduation on May 1st, always good, recognizing the life-saving awards, which they give out to the EMTs and paramedics when a life is actually saved, bringing somebody into the hospital. And always a very good thing. Thank goodness they're there. Let's see, spent the week of the 6th touring people through the new airport terminal, which is on the verge of opening. So we took through city people, county people, university people, Chamber of Commerce people. So we ran a lot of tours through the airport who got to see the whole thing before TSA gets there and shuts down things under the security blanket. First flights this Wednesday, 5 a.m. goes out. First flight coming back is at noon on Wednesday. And there are some of us
Gonna
who
be
are,
on that
I
flight?
am. So I bought myself a ticket to go from here to Seattle, sit in the Alaska Lounge for a couple hours, and then come right back. Also, which actually flies in the face of the Earth Day people. I shouldn't have doing that. But also, some of the other board members are also going along on that. So it'll be a fun pair of flights. Let's see, who else we got? Mrs. Ogura from Japan was on campus. She's one of the last survivors of the Hiroshima bombing. She was there when she was 6 years old and just happened to be standing behind a stone wall when the thing went off. And so she's been an advocate for elimination of nuclear weapons worldwide and has been quite the ambassador both in Japan and globally with her efforts to make people aware of the human consequences of dropping atomic weapons. Let's see, went off to the Avista presentation over in Pullman on the future of energy in the Pacific Northwest. Very informative. On the 9th was the CHEMPS, which is Moscow's Employee Recognition Lunch. And I would like to thank again all of our employees who are really our most valuable resource for their knowledge, skills, and abilities that keep this city running. There aren't many of them, about 170, and they're the ones that are responsible for water running out of your faucet that's safe to drink and water going the other way from the toilet where you don't have to think about it, the streets, the parks, the stormwater, everything that goes on in here is our city staff working hard to support us, the citizens. Chamber of Commerce auction where I had my slice of $100 apple pie.
Okay.
And also I had my cabin in Montana up for auction, and that brought in a chunk of change for the chamber too. So work on that. So anyway, that was about 2 months worth of things that went on. Phil, do you have anything?
Nothing from staff this evening.
Okay,
I move we adjourn.
good idea. I'll second that and adjourn us. Thank you all for coming.